But if I was God and I saw that they were victims of misinformation despite all of their efforts, I think that it is unjust that they died because of it.
Yesterday, I made a video critiquing a video made by the woman in this video, Erin, and she made a response. The first clip has Erin saying that if people die from misinformation despite all their best efforts, then that would be unjust. But this is circular reasoning, as she is assuming that if somebody employed their best reasoning, there would have been a victim of this information in the first place, which I think is nonsense. Many of the people that I was referencing were people who blatantly mocked healthcare officials who were trying to provide accurate information to them. They were not poor innocent souls who happened to get told the wrong thing. So there is nothing unjust with them dying as a result of their bad actions. Don't get me wrong, I don't want anybody to die, even these people who say this dumb silly stuff and spread misinformation. But in many of these instances, it's a textbook case of play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
But unfortunately, that's just the way this world works. And to your point about the January 6th insurrectionists, the reason that those people were in jail is because they were a direct threat to other members of society.
So regarding the January 6th insurrectionists, I think you missed the point here. You say that they are in jail because of their actions, not because they sat around and believed something. Yes, and they performed those actions because of their beliefs. Our beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. We live out our beliefs every single day. The point of that example wasn't to draw an analogy between them and you. The point of that analogy was to illustrate that bad actions which originate from false beliefs can't be swept under the rug and excused. And the reason these can't be excused is because they ought to have known better. They can be held accountable based on the information that they had.
Is that I was born and raised a Christian. I actively learned about Christian beliefs. I actively evaluated all of the evidence. And in fact, in my 5 years of deconstruction, that's all I did all the time.
You know what? I'm going to choose to believe that you fairly and reasonably evaluated this topic until you give me some reason to doubt it.
But if your evidence for a man resurrecting from the dead is anything less than a video account with multiple first-hand witnesses, many people are not going to believe that that actually happened.
And there's the reason to doubt that you fairly and reasonably evaluated this topic. I specifically said in my first video that part of the choices we make when evaluating evidence is to employ sound epistemic principles. Saying that the only way to convince you is to have a video is employing a ridiculous epistemic standard to resurrection claims. If you were consistent in this standard, you would have to throw out all of our historical knowledge before the invention of videography. You would have to throw out every court case in which we don't have video evidence of the crime being committed, which, is most of them. But of course, you don't apply this standard to them. You are hypocritical and inconsistent in how you evaluate data. You apply one set of standards to one set of claims and another set of criteria to a different set of claims. I also want to point out that even if we had a video account of a person resurrecting today, I doubt that would convince you. You would say that it was created with AI software, or you would say that it's staged. Having picture or video evidence in our current age is probably the least impressive form of evidence.
So if I'm not convinced that a human man in the flesh did not resurrect from the dead 2,000 years ago, which means I can't logically accept that Jesus is king, that he is my savior, I am a cosmic terrorist?
If you choose to suppress the evidence we have of Jesus' resurrection and you fail to recognize him as king, you are actively rebelling against him. You are not a helpless victim whose brain just didn't work right. No. You have already shown in this video that you have chosen to not employ reasonable, charitable standards in the evaluation of the evidence for Jesus' resurrection.
Despite all of my decades of effort trying to be convinced that Jesus rose from the dead, I still come to the conclusion that that didn't happen.
If you respond to this video, I want you to list what Christian scholars you have read or listened to specifically on this subject. What New Testament experts, what philosophers who specialize in resurrection and epistemology have you engaged with that did not convince you? 9 times out of 10, when I hear this crap, it's somebody who sought evidence by asking their pastor and then watching Matt Dillahunty videos. And if that's the extent of your research, it's pretty meaningless that it didn't convince you. But again, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here and assume that you did actually engage in, credible research. So by all means, share those with me.
Belief and sinning are 2 different categories.
No, this is incorrect. Failing to acknowledge the rightful ruler of this world is itself a sin. Lack of belief is a sin. It is an insult and an act of mutiny against God. This is literally the sin that caused Satan's downfall. He refused to recognize that God was God, and he wanted to seat himself on the divine throne. And this form of sin is not isolated in our minds. It seeps into our actions. You are a great example of this, as you are actively sowing the seeds of rebellion in this world with your TikTok account.
Loving me is throwing me into hell. It sounds like there are conditions there.
Loving somebody and letting them face the consequences of their actions are not mutually exclusive. This is just like the rebellious child crying that daddy kicked them out of the house.
Actually not burning in eternal torture in the fiery pits of hell is my human brain to be convinced that this resurrection happened. That is the most conditional love I have ever heard.
You were making several questionable assumptions about the nature of hell. First, many Christians don't think it's literally fire, but rather a place of complete separation from God. The New Testament refers to it often as the place of outer darkness. But let's just suppose it is literal fire. Many Christians don't think this is eternal. Many think that the damned are just destroyed and cease to exist. And other people don't think that anyone will eternally experience hell. They think eventually everyone will see the error of their ways and will come to God, and that hell will eventually be empty. There are different views regarding hell within Christianity. What you are objecting to is a specific doctrine of hell within Christianity. I have dozens of devout Christian friends who think that nobody will experience hell for eternity. But let's suppose that it's literally eternal fiery torment. You are again just crying that you have to face consequences for your rebellion. And it's at this point I will point out that you have yet to express an actual argument against Christianity. You have complained about Christianity and expressed your dislike for its doctrines, but expressing dislike for a religion does not constitute a defeater for that religion. Your biggest problem for Christianity is, I don't like this. So if you have an actual argument that indicates whether Christianity is true or false, by all means, deconstruct me. Let's go. You having an online therapy session doesn't constitute an argument.
Even if he lets people into heaven because they are convinced that that happened, I think that's manipulation.
So this is a silly idea that is asserted with no argument. Imagine that somebody comes into your medical room and is suffering from a fatal issue. Maybe it's a dangerous snake bite, they OD'd on drugs, I don't know, gunshot wound, dealer's choice here, right? You might say, hey, I can fix this issue you have, but in order to do so, I'm going to have to give you this medication and you're going to have to take it every day. Or maybe I have to perform this surgery. It would be stupid for your patient to say, oh, wow, you'll only fix me on the condition that I take your medicine or allow this surgery. You're being so manipulative right now. You shouldn't be conditioning whether or not you heal me based on whether or not I do this other thing that you want. This is stupid because the very thing they are refusing is the only means of fixing them. The bullet has to be removed and the wound sewn so that the bleeding and the infection can be prevented. Similarly, the only way to have peace with God, the only way to have any form of peace is for our diseased souls to be healed. And every act of sin only pushes us farther away. You are like a woman who has emphysema and is saying she wants her lungs fixed, but she doesn't want to give up smoking. The issue can never be fixed until the underlying cause is cut out.